my name's Jimmy. I'm from Liverpool School Sports Partnership, and I'm really pleased that the work that we're doing can actually support this area of work. So thanks for inviting me on. I would like to start with the problem, and I'm sure most of you are aware of this, but I think it's worth reiterating where we are. A report from the Youth Endowment Fund in 2025, almost 11,000 young people surveyed. So you can see from the data here, almost 1 in 5 of young people had been a victim of violence. 1 in 8 admitted to carrying out violence themselves. Around a half of those surveys had witnessed violence committed against someone else. And almost 2/3 of victims and perpetrators say it happened more than once, with 20% saying it happened at least 5 times. And then if you look at the same report and what they're saying around sort of the impact that social media has, you can just see some of this. Over half of the young people who were surveyed said they had seen videos on social media involving young people fighting. Around 1/3 had seen content promoting or the use of weapons, and 30% had seen content glorifying attacks on young people. And I think you're all probably aware of the Louis Theroux documentary in the Manosphere and how powerful social media can be in influencing young people. I think now with the work that's going on and what's happening with social media, it's amplifying that normalization of violence, and influencers are having more and more of an impact on there. And obviously that's becoming a bigger problem for society, but from where I stand, a sort of bigger problem in schools as well. So some of that impact comes in through schools. This is data from autumn 2024-25. And this is suspension. So over 335,000 young people were suspended from school just in autumn alone, and almost 4,000 young people were permanently excluded. If we take those figures into sort of localized, that means in Merseyside, that was over 8,500 people suspended and almost 150 permanently excluded just in autumn alone. Now, if I've just looked at some of the data for Liverpool, in Liverpool, 6% of the suspensions, which was nearly 4,000 in Liverpool, and permanently exclusions were a result of physical violence against another adult. Now, that's obviously in school, that's not out of school. So 6% of all those, nearly 4,000 suspensions in Liverpool were as a result of violence against an adult, and 16% of all those exclusions, suspensions and permanent exclusions, but as a result of an assault against another young person. So if you sort of take that down, that's nearly 2,000 students suspended and almost 250 permanently excluded from school as a result of assaulting someone in autumn alone. So you can see that the scale of the problem is quite big. So how can sport help? There is lots of evidence about the effectiveness and impact sport has on both engaging and developing young people. And as Graham mentioned so eloquently, as he always does, the street games theory of change shows how sport really does provide opportunities to develop those pro-social behaviours, and probably just as importantly, those pro-social relationships. So that's where we were in LSSP. We initially started a programme supported by the Youth Sport Trust way back in 2019. And the programme that we designed was called Boys Move. We were piloting it in one school, which was Archbishop Beck. And the idea was to try and engage working class boys from school, because the evidence was showing that they were sort of falling behind on almost every metric: GCSEs, university, decreasing engagement with schools, increasing engagement with law enforcement, which is quite evident if you look at the hotspot data around that area as well. And obviously then we're getting into their potential gang membership. So what we did with those young people, I had the joy of working with probably 25 of the most hard to reach young men in the school. And we did a co-creation activity. That was the first and foremost thing, because as Graham said, it's not trying to do to, it's do with. And what the group said, and I outlined as some of their problems, was relationships with teachers, relationship with family, anger issues that they couldn't understand, frustration, money issues, and home life. So they were some of the problems that they were coming to school with. And then obviously in school, they were being challenged on the work, what was happening in their behaviour. And then that was leading to greater frustrations in school. So what them young people decided they wanted, and this was all done with staff at school, was to develop what we call the sporting sanctuary. And the idea was they could get a bit of a pass from class when they were feeling frustrated. So rather than arguing with the member staff in the classroom, they could go along to the sporting sanctuary, let out a bit of frustration, which they wanted to sort of pad work and combat-based fitness, and then hopefully go and catch up on their work. The young people at Archbishop Beck also said that they wanted to do a social action project, which I thought was a brilliant idea. They wanted to actually build an eco gym on the school site. So like you see in the parks, they wanted to build one on the site of Archbishop Beck. Unfortunately, that didn't quite come off. But that sort of sense of belonging and being valued at the school really, I think, would have made a massive difference to those young people who were in that initial co-creation. Let's get a drink. So that led to us that was our bit of a pilot about how this type of work would work. What we quickly realised is that staff can't do everything in school. So we designed a new project, which is called Fighting for a Future. This was actually funded, an initial bit of pilot money from the Community Safety Partnership here in Liverpool. And then we went on some additional training. We used the Street Games Theory of Change document that Graham just put up before. And we also looked at the Yet sort of toolkit to help us design what that would be. We then engaged young mentors who were actually on an MMA pathway to become professional athletes. We wanted to use young people because we thought they would be better suited as role models rather than someone like myself as an old person coming into school and trying to engage young people. It's better if we can get young people who've not long left school. But the young people from the MMA club were fantastic. So we trained them up in a bit of mental health training. We give them some yoga and we give them some breath work to help with that sort of calming young people down. And they were then helping young people to set their own goals and reflect on their own behaviour, because they were having that experience as being professional athletes. You know, what's worked well for me today, what hasn't worked well for me today. So the sport element was giving those broader life skills, because they weren't just going to, so people always had the impression that we're just going to beat people up, but actually these were very disciplined young people. And they were absolutely fantastic. So as that Theory of Change document says, sport was the hook, and the hook for those young people was that combat-based fitness. And as again, the toolkit says, what we want to do is expose those young people to opportunities that develop the positive physical, social and emotional well-being. And that's what we were trying to achieve through that initial sport. Because like sort of anti-social behaviour, strong pro-social bonds and role models do increase the likelihood of more pro-social behaviours. And obviously that was coming through that sport base. That's where they were being exposed to that pro-social behaviour. Our current iteration is actually called I Am. So the I Am programme that we're running now was funded by the Safe Task Force. It developed on the back of those two programmes that we've said. But it was increasingly evident that we couldn't fall on those young people because they were also focused on their own developments. They were still only young themselves. So what we went out to do is sort of recruit sort of community-based mentors who had lots of experience working with young people in the community. So some of those are already martial arts people. They were into fitness, they were yoga or youth workers in that sort of community-based setting. Again, we looked at the Youth Endowment Toolkit to help us develop what this programme was look like. And what we come up with is a bit more than just the sort of sport. And as Graham said, that wraparound. So we come up with a sort of a multimodal approach where everything was sort of high impact, but relatively low cost. And that was the sports programme, which was combat-based fitness. It also had yoga in there, but I'll explain that in a second. It had social skills development through the programme. We also looked at mentoring, not traditional one-to-one, although we do a little bit of that. And it also was based on the framework of cognitive behaviour approach called choice theory. Choice theory was used very strongly in Scotland on their No Knives, Better Lives campaign. So all the youth workers were trained up in choice theory so they could go and have meaningful conversations with young people to help them develop their own plan about where they wanted to be. So we trained our mentors up in that choice theory. It's a framework that was developed by someone called William Glasser, and it sort of proposes that all behaviour is based on meeting 5 basic needs, which is survival, love and belonging, power, freedom and fun. Now, what I always say is if you look at gang memberships and you might even see it through your school and community, a young person, especially a vulnerable young person, will get all those needs met. Survival, because they might be earning money through whatever means. Love and belonging, because they're with friends and they feel like they're part of something. They may have that power because if someone says something, their friends and their gang will go and back them up. And obviously they've got freedom because they feel they can do what they want. And obviously they're with a group of young people, they will be having fun in their eyes. So we've got to break that cycle. So we're trying to create some pro-social changes that young people can see that they're meeting their needs through their pro-social behaviour. There's a big thing within it's called total behaviour, and that sort of says that young people are their behaviour is composed of 4 interconnected components, and that's thinking, feeling, acting, the doing, and the physiology. And we work with young people to get them to realise and identify when they are feeling something, and that hopefully their emotion won't drive their behaviour. So we'll go back to those young people in Archbishop Beck, when they were feeling frustrated and they were coming into school and then someone would say something, their frustration and their anger, their emotion would boil over and they would be sent out of the class, sent to isolation, and then be building up lots of stuff. So they then felt that they were unfairly treated in school. So we were trying to get them to recognise that they were feeling frustrated and how can they change their behaviour so that doesn't manage what they're doing, and their actual thought process is what determines their behaviour. So the program is a 12-week program. What we do is a check-in. So this is the same structure each week. We have a check-in, which is a bit of a choice theory discussion, which might be, did you notice that you've used your breathing techniques to calm down? We then go into mobility training, because we always say to the young people, if you want to be fit and healthy, you've got to be able to be agile and move, and you've got to be fit. That's just basic yoga. We then do the combat-based fitness. That is the place where the mentor can do that one-to-one work with young people and have those discussions, because while the young person is doing, it's easy for them to talk about what's happening in their lives. We then focus on an AMRAP, which is as many rounds as possible. So it's a high intensity fitness part. The view here is, and the message we say is, we want you to really be determined to be the best you possible. And this is where it is. So you want to do something, you've got to work hard to get it. And that's where the AMRAP comes in. But the bit for us is we want them to be tired, ready for the next phase and burn off all that sort of energy, because the next phase we talk about is mental fitness. And this is where we talk about goal setting. What are you doing now and what do you want? If you want to go to college, is what you're doing now getting you what you want? If the answer is no, then what are you going to do to make that? And we ask them to start setting small goals. So each week, that sort of meditation goal setting place will get bigger and bigger as the young people start looking at what they're doing. It's called WDEP in the choice theory world. And that's helping them set goal plan. And then there's a bit of a checkout. How are you feeling? This is what I'll help you to do. What is your plan this week around what you're going to do from today's lesson? And that's been funded by the SAFE Task Force since 2023. And I think, considering it's only a 12-week programme, working in schools, the impact has been huge. So in one school, so we actually paid for an independent researcher from Liverpool, John Moores University, to evaluate the course. So rather than me saying this is how it works, so she went in and did sort of both pre and post qualitative surveys and quantitative surveys online, and also done some interviews with staff and focus groups with young people. So in one school, 27% of the students showed a significant increase in attendance. Those where attendance levels were already good said that their feelings around schools had changed, positively changed from being part of this programme. And then this young man who I'm seeing here, 27%, funny enough, his attendance at school was actually only 28%. And he said, it doesn't matter if I come to school, I just stay home and mind the dog. But he wanted, his main goal was to become a clothing entrepreneur. So that's what he had in his mind. So working with the mentor, they put a plan together about how he would achieve that goal. And he came to the realization himself that he needed to be in school because he definitely needed English and maths. So his attendance at school on those days went up, which to me is fantastic. And like this is just some feedback from what the young people have said. Like sometimes I can be very cheeky to the teachers, and that doesn't really happen anymore. Waking up earlier, sorting my routines, making breakfast, getting things ready instead of getting my mum to do it. So you can see they're starting to take personal responsibility for their own life. And that's all through that sport as the hook, and then doing that wraparound care that Graham mentioned earlier on. This is just some more sort of data that come back from the programme. So before and after, we asked the question of young people, fill in the sentence, I am, hence the name of the programme. And before the programme, it was things like, I am aggressive, I am naughty, I am anxious, loud, bad kid, nervous. Lots of the things around confidence were based around their performances in, are you good at football? I am. So there's lots of those as well. And then after the intervention, the post-intervention, the phrases were a bit more nuanced and a bit more considered. I am a lot better as a student. I am my own person. I am motivated. I'm a good friend. I'm a good listener. So you can see that the benefits of the program were and improved attendance. But they were really looking at themselves introspectively. They were more self-aware about what they were doing and how they should act. We did notice that confidence scores went down. But that, as I said before, the pre-confidence score was based on something they thought was really important, like I'm good at football. And what they realised that life and social skills are more important, and they could see that they needed to develop, which we thought was a good thing. How does it come on? So evidence from the Youth Endowment Toolkit also shows that the social skills element that we do actually reduces the number of young people involved in crime by 32%. Thinking before they act, communicating effectively, and using strategies to manage his impulsiveness, aggression. Now, we do all of this through this I Am programme. That's part of that Choice 30 conversation. And this is a statement from Stephen, who we were talking about earlier on, funny enough, from King's Leadership. So in their school, they were really worried about exploitation and young people being pulled in sort of into county lines type work. So you can see what he said there. Exploitation was our top priorities in school and was an area of most concern with the Year 9 group. We've seen a massive drop in concerns around exploitations in Year 9, and that's down to us, the school, investing in the young people by investing in the project, and we were really pleased with their progress. And this is just on 12 weeks. So for us, it was absolutely amazing to see this thingy. Despite all that, though, I do think there are some challenges, and there's a literacy review by the Catch-22. And this is about the impact that exclusions from school have on young people. That's why I put that data up at the start. So this literacy review found that exclusions not only negatively impact an individual's trajectory, but disproportionately affect certain students. And obviously that's the more vulnerable students are disproportionately affected by that. And prioritising disciplinary procedures within school has been shown to have a significant implications on an individual's academic achievement, mental health, and risk of involvement in crime. And I thought that was a big thing when you see that. So, you know, putting kids into exclusion and putting them permanent exclusion and they end up in PRUs and that type of thing does have an impact on that and is pushing towards that crime. They also found that embracing, so this is where the sport bit comes in, embracing preventative approaches that strategically focused on targeted interventions within school, not only safeguards against immediate behaviour challenges, which we've just seen through the choice theory data, but also holds the transformative power to significantly mitigate the risk of involvement in the criminal justice system. I think that's more than powerful. And again, the Youth Endowment Toolkit have said sport is highly effective for engaging young people, offering significant physical, mental and social benefits. I'm not going to read the rest. So I would say that programmes within school, if we can design using the Theory of Change documents, the Youth Endowment Toolkit evidence, and design interventions that work within school, targeting vulnerable young people that may be pulled into crime, I think sport does have a massive role to play within school. And you're going to need to think that yourself when you say you've got young people who are good at football and you say you're not going unless you do, how their behaviour changes. Thank you for your time. Obviously, there are just some contact details. I think Chris may be on the line. So Chris is our new project lead for this area. So if anyone does have any further questions or would like to know more, you can either get in touch with myself or Chris.
Thanks, Jimmy. And we'll distribute the slides, and as I say, the recordings will be available for people to reflect on and refer back to. I really like that phrase, sporting sanctuary. I wondered when you said that about some of the new procedures that are coming into schools, and we know that young people are going to be internal exclusions are going to become more and more common. We know they are common, but more and more. And how are these isolation spaces going to be looking would be a question that I would be asking. And how could our sporting sanctuaries be a sort of a part of that discussion? And we've got one question here from Joanne. We'll take that now, please.
Yeah, hi Jimmy.
Hello, Joe.
Hi, yeah, you're right. I just wanted to advocate for Jimmy's programmes. I had the privilege of working with Jimmy and Archbishop Beck, and now at Waterside Academy we are Sefton Council's pupil referral unit, and we currently are on our second cohort of the I Am project, and I just want to echo all the feedback and research what Jimmy's just evidenced there, to say that our young people, our first cohort and the second cohort, this is having a huge impact on our young people's social, emotional, mental health. They are really engaged. They are really intrigued by something a little bit different. The breathwork side of it, a bit of yoga. For the likes of our young people, and Jimmy alluded to it there, who have been excluded, they have that disconnect from the social environment, from education, from adults, and they are really starting to engage very positively in what is put on offer. We're seeing an increase in their well-being and resilience, and to see them active physically, and then being signposted by Jimmy's coaches to boxing or football or whatever it might be that is of interest to them out in the local community, is really, really beneficial for them to have that social investment outside. But then equally we see the positive in terms of their engagement, etc. once they're inside with us. So thank you for your support, Jimmy. Our young people, it is making a huge difference.
Thanks, Joe. I'll give you that 50 quid later.
100, thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks, Joe. And I would also concur in that I've recently seen some engagement with some other of our alternative provisions across Merseyside, and the feedback that we get from the programme is outstanding. So thank you.